You still remember those dinners, the ones where every sound felt dangerous. Your father's footsteps coming down the hallway were like distant thunder signaling a storm, and suddenly the kitchen table wasn't a place to eat. It was a place to survive. Your chest tightened as the floor creaked beneath his feet, each step louder than the last. Every spoonful of food tasted of tension. Every quiet glance exchanged was a silent plea not to make things worse. Your mother stared down at her plate as if she could vanish if she tried hard enough. No one spoke because silence was safer. In those moments, you learned the language of fear. Your body memorized exactly how shallow your breath needed to be, how softly you had to chew, how to sit invisibly. You discovered that your very existence could trigger anger. So you shrank yourself, small enough to disappear. Every muscle in your young body was trained to sense danger, becoming an expert at predicting moods, reading faces, avoiding minds before they exploded. But the war at the dinner table didn't end when you grew up and left home. It followed you silently into adulthood. You're still listening for footsteps, still holding your breath when someone's voice sharpens. You still measure safety by how invisible you can be, because the truth you learned as a child remains locked within you. When home is a battlefield, survival means never letting down your guard. Yet beneath your careful silence, there's a hidden voice still waiting to be heard. So let me ask you one thing clearly tonight. The child inside who once learned to vanish into silence, have they ever truly felt safe enough to come out of hiding? As you grew older, you became an expert at reading rooms. It wasn't something you consciously chose. It was survival. You learned to adapt, to predict others' feelings with astonishing accuracy. If someone was tense, you knew exactly how to soften your voice. If someone was angry, you could shrink yourself smaller, quieter, almost invisible. People praised your empathy, your ability to always seem fine. Yet no one saw that beneath your perfect mask lay an unspoken exhaustion, a hidden ache that never left. You developed this false self, a persona carefully sculpted to be agreeable, composed, and easy to love. This wasn't deception, it was a shield, crafted piece by piece from the fragments of a childhood filled with emotional chaos. Underneath that shield lived your authentic self, the child who had learned too soon that their feelings didn't matter. You became skilled at masking sadness with smiles, anxiety with laughter, loneliness with a reassuring nod. Behind your impeccable performance, though, lingered constant anxiety, an endless unease born from the relentless fear of being discovered for who you truly were. This fear didn't emerge from nowhere. It was rooted deep within your childhood, a time when your experiences, your emotions, your very perception of reality were routinely dismissed and denied. You grew up surrounded by subtle yet relentless emotional violence, gaslighting disguised as discipline, dismissal disguised as guidance. Each time you tried to voice your truth, you were gently yet firmly silenced. That didn't happen, they said. You're overreacting, they insisted. Slowly, you internalized their denial as your own, learning to distrust your feelings, to question your own memories. Your nervous system adapted to constant threat, stuck in perpetual hypervigilance, always bracing for the next emotional blow, never fully relaxing, always scanning for danger. Your childhood home didn't just silence you, it erased you. It taught you that your emotions were dangerous, your perceptions unreliable, your truth unwelcome. And so, to survive, you signed an invisible contract, a silent agreement with your past that said your voice, your authentic self, had no place. It was safer to remain quiet, easier to nod and smile, even if your body trembled beneath the surface. Today, the echoes of that past still shape your days. At work, you sit in meetings, smiling calmly as colleagues casually ask, "Are you okay?" Your answer comes swiftly, automatically. "Yes, of course." Your voice is steady, your face perfectly controlled. But inside, your heart races, your stomach tightens, your limbs tremble slightly beneath the table. Later, alone at home, you collapse into exhaustion, your carefully maintained facade shattering like glass. You wonder how much longer you can sustain this quiet war against yourself. Your body has become a relentless emotional mine detector, forever set on high alert, sensitive to the smallest shifts in mood, constantly bracing for an explosion that might never come. You navigate each interaction with practiced caution, weighed down by the armor of forced calmness you've carried since childhood. Yet despite your vigilance, you feel more isolated than ever, trapped in a silence that once protected but now suffocates. Here's the harsh truth. You didn't choose this life. You were conditioned into it. You learned silence because it was the only thing that kept you safe. You wore masks because authenticity risked rejection. You adapted perfectly, beautifully, heartbreakingly to a world where your true feelings were unwelcome. But how long can you maintain this exhausting performance? How long before the weight of silence becomes unbearable? Ask yourself now, honestly and clearly, how many years have you worn this mask? And after all this time, can you still tell the difference between who you truly are and who you pretend to be? Now, years later, you feel the toll your silent armor has taken. Nights stretch endlessly, restless, your eyes wide open in the dark. Sleep has become elusive, tangled with anxiety that arrives without explanation, sinking into your chest like a stone. You lie awake, replaying conversations, analyzing tiny gestures, convinced there must be hidden meanings, subtle threats waiting for you to decipher. You're exhausted, yet your mind refuses rest, still vigilant, still ready for danger that no longer exists. Then suddenly anger flares inside you, sharp and fierce, rising from nowhere, triggered by the smallest frustrations. You snap harshly at loved ones, startling even yourself. The moment anger subsides, a wave of profound shame washes over you. Your heart tightens painfully with guilt. "Why am I like this?" you whisper, turning your anger inward until it becomes self-loathing. You punish yourself silently for being broken, for always feeling too much or nothing at all. And so, gradually, you retreat further inward. Isolation becomes comfort. You push people away, convinced their kindness is just a mask for hidden cruelty, their love merely a disguise for inevitable abandonment. Your loneliness grows, yet somehow you feel safer behind the walls you've built. You feel rejected, abandoned, never realizing that it was your own hand that pushed everyone away. Even in solitude, you find no peace. You become obsessed with signs and synchronicities, desperately seeking messages from the universe, numbers, symbols, passing phrases, anything that might offer direction, validation, reassurance. You interpret coincidence as destiny, convinced that hidden clues can make sense of your internal chaos. Deep inside, you sense it's irrational, yet you cling to these signs because your reality feels too fragmented, too uncertain, too unsafe without something outside yourself to believe in. Beneath these behaviors lies a profound truth. Each reaction, each pattern, each coping mechanism is the desperate survival strategy of the wounded child you buried long ago. That child who once learned invisibility, hypervigilance, silence as their only protection, now tries to survive within your adult body. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This fate you're trapped in, the insomnia, anger, isolation, obsessive searching for signs, is simply the voice of that child crying out, unheard, unrecognized, demanding attention after years of neglect. The crisis you label as madness, anxiety, or breakdown is actually your inner child breaking free, shattering the false self you spent decades perfecting. The psychologist Alice Miller described this clearly. The childhood wounds that remain unrecognized do not disappear. They find their expression through symptoms, compulsions, and self-destructive behaviors. What you call madness is actually your lost self, exhausted by decades of suppression, finally rising up, demanding to be acknowledged, to be felt, to be healed. Imagine standing before the mirror tonight, facing yourself after another day spent performing. Your reflection looks calm, poised, successful. Yet when you lean closer, when you meet your own eyes, you glimpse something else. Behind your careful composure, behind your impeccable mask, is a child still trapped in those quiet dinners, still afraid, still aching, still begging for someone to listen. The image unsettles you because you know it's true. The perfect mask you've worn all these years is finally cracking, revealing the painful darkness you've hidden away so carefully. Here's a truth you've always sensed, but rarely acknowledged. Your silence isn't strength, it's exhaustion. Your self-control isn't confidence, it's fear. Your solitude isn't independence, it's isolation born from distrust. You built these walls to survive, but now they have become your prison. And now, here in this quiet moment, ask yourself the question you've avoided your whole life. If tomorrow you finally take off that mask you've worn so long, what hidden self, what long-buried truths will step into the light? Healing doesn't mean fixing something broken. It means uncovering what's been buried deep within you for far too long. You aren't flawed, damaged, or beyond repair. You're simply hidden beneath layers of silence and survival. Layers you built carefully and quietly to protect yourself from pain. Healing is about gently removing those layers, one by one, allowing the person you've always been to emerge. It isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming authentic, honest, and finally yourself. Begin by allowing yourself to feel, even if it hurts. Give yourself permission to sit quietly with those emotions you spent years running from. The sadness, the anger, the fear. They won't destroy you. In fact, they'll free you. Let vulnerability become your strength, and honesty your sanctuary. Each small moment of truth you offer yourself chips away at the walls you built around your heart, opening up space for compassion, understanding, and ultimately acceptance. Find a quiet space and start writing your story, unfiltered and unedited. Let your truth spill onto the page, raw and real, as though you're finally releasing all you've held inside. Writing is more than expression. It's an act of reclaiming your voice, of telling yourself that your feelings matter. It's a conversation between you and the child within, a child who's waited too long to be heard. If it feels right, seek guidance from someone trained to navigate this delicate path alongside you. A therapist or counselor who understands the complexities of buried pain. You don't have to walk this path alone. Healing often happens most profoundly when shared with someone who genuinely sees you, hears you, and validates the truth of your experience. Inside you, beneath the heavy soil of denial, there's a small, resilient seed, still alive, still waiting patiently to grow. It was never destroyed, only hidden, kept safely in darkness until you were ready. Now is your moment to offer it sunlight and water, to nourish the forgotten parts of your soul. Allow yourself to imagine this, a new life gently pushing through the earth, delicate yet determined, finally breathing freely above the surface. Ask yourself tonight, what could your life become if the child within you, the one who once learned only silence, finally heard their own voice spoken clearly and confidently? How might your world transform if the deepest truths you've hidden were embraced instead of denied? If you've recognized yourself in these words, if you feel that gentle stirring within, subscribe and join this quiet journey toward healing. Stay with this channel, explore the stories here, and continue walking the path of uncovering yourself. Each video is another gentle invitation, another chance to meet the true self you once had to leave behind. and to reclaim the voice you were always meant to use. When you finally allow your inner child to speak, what beautiful truths will you discover waiting within you?